Hello and welcome to another episode of News from the Gelding. Okay, as yesterday was Halloween, I thought I would do a special episode where I'm going to recommend 5 books of the horror variety and 5 horror films that I think are particularly scary. Some of them are maybe films or books you may not have heard of before, and others you probably will know. Anyway, fancy a bit of that? Join me in a bit after I've got down into my dark haunted dungeon, and we shall proceed. See you in a bit. Hello, and welcome back. You join me here in my basement, where all manner of devilish things await. Actually, I just turned the light off, but you get the idea. I've also got some candles. Okay, before I begin, I'm just going to say I've got my own book out. Here it is. It's a mixture of high and low fantasy and a little bit of horror mixed in for good measure. Link below. That's all I'll say. Maybe check it out. Okay, so let's begin with the books. I read across all genres, but I probably read less of horror. I don't read it very often. I've read a lot of Stephen King, and I like a lot of his stuff. So we'll begin with one of his books, my favourite, which is Pet Sematary. Now, it took me many years to get around to reading this. The title and the blurb put me off the book itself. I don't really find the idea of dead pets, even if they came back to life, that's scary. But this was probably the scariest book I've ever read. And so I'll just talk a little tiny bit about it. I'm not going to give too much away about any of these books. All I'll say is that all the ones I recommend, I think are really worth watching. Okay, so family, mother, father, and small child moved to a new house beside a busy road. They've also got a pet cat. Now, the pet cat quickly bites the dust, gets run over by a car or something on the busy road. And there's this rumor or myth of a special cemetery where if you bury something, it will come back to life. So gives it a go, and the cat does come back to life, but it's not right. It's a bad cat, if you know what I mean. Now, it's not giving too much away, really, I don't think, but the child also dies on this busy road, and the father considers bringing the child back to life in the same way. I'll leave it there, but it's incredibly scary and deals with the idea of life and death. And if you could bring back someone from the dead, would you do it? A loved one? I think most of us probably would. And this is about the consequences of doing so. Anyway, give that one a go. It's really good. Highly recommend that. I can barely see my notes here because I've got my glasses on and they're reflecting on light. I've also got to make sure I don't burn my beard off. Okay, next one is Once by James Herbert, the English writer who's sadly no longer with us. I've read a number of his books. Some of them are okay, some of them I wasn't so keen on, but this one I thought was particularly good. Not overly scary, but very interesting in its ideas. I believe I've read a lot of these books in the past. So from what I remember, it's a man that's recuperating from a stroke. And to rehabilitate himself, he goes back to where he grew up. And he lived on the grounds of a large estate, one of the old English estates, of a grand house and big lots of land. And he grew up in a little cottage, like a labourer's cottage, with his mother. And he doesn't remember much of his childhood, but he knows it's a very pleasant time. When he goes back there, he encounters a woman who is perhaps a witch. But there are also there's fairies and pixies and all kinds of these fey creatures that live in the woods nearby, and bit by bit he gets to discover them. They're not actually normal people can't see them, but because he spent so much of his childhood there, these start coming out of the woodwork or the woods. There's also an evil person, of course, but I won't say any more about that. I will only say that I just like the way that this low fantasy setting was explored. The horror aspect of it I wasn't so interested in really, but it was interesting. Yeah, worth a go, I'd say. Okay, there we have another wonderful one. Okay, next on the agenda is Susan Hill's The Small Hand. Now, you may know of The Woman in Black. You probably know this book as well. Who knows? I've seen the film as well with Harry Potter, Daniel Radcliffe in there. It was okay, a bit those cheap jump scares I'm not so interested in. The book is better, obviously. Now, The Small Hand is a fairly short story by comparison, and it, again, I'm just going on what I remembered, but it was like a book dealer in antique books, rare books, and he makes, after seeing one of his clients, he's driving through the countryside and becomes lost and stumbles upon an old house, similar in some ways to what I imagine the house was like in once. It's maybe an old estate of some kind, but this is all disused. It's empty, and he climbs in through the rusted gate and goes through the overgrown garden and comes across a pond. And whilst he's standing there in the silence of this old house and its grounds, he feels a small hand go into a child's hand, and clasps his hand and looks around, and there's no one there, obviously. It's, something strange is going on. But this presence, this hand, appears later on in various ways. So it's a ghost that's not bound to that place, but he kind of picks up the ghost and it becomes slightly more sinister the further along it goes. Very well written, and quite eerie, really. Worth a try. Okay. What have we got next? Ooh, The Book of Skulls by Robert Silverberg. I read this one a long time ago, and it's not strictly classed as horror, but I thought I'd put it in because it's quite an interesting idea. And it involves or surrounds 4 university students. It's set in America, so it's college students, and they come across an old Catalan manuscript of some kind that talks about a monastery of monks hidden in the deserts of Arizona. Now, the thing that piques their interest is that these monks supposedly know the secrets of immortality and invulnerability, and so they set out to try and find it, and they do. And the things they've got to go through to try and attain immortality are quite odd, quite strange, very strange. It's very... I enjoyed the book. It was very well written. The thing I most enjoyed was the idea of this very strange place offering such amazing powers could exist within our world. And so you don't really know, even when they find this place, whether there's anything in it. You think, perhaps a very strange cult that's kind of lost its way and they're just hidden away in the desert. But it's very, very worth reading, I would say. Give that one a go as well. Okay, last on the list. Now, this isn't strictly horror either, but it's by one of my favourite authors, Clive Barker, and it's called Magica. I've talked about this on one of my other videos. Now, this is a blend of high and low fantasy, and it's also got horror in it. They're all woven together, and eroticism, all manner of things. It's an amazing adventure, and also quite scary at times. He wrote this book when he was 40. I saw an interview of him, and he said he wrote it for himself as a present for his 40th birthday, and I thought, that's quite an amazing thing to give yourself, and it's so well written. It's quite an inspiration to me, actually, that book, and I really highly recommend it. Not that spooky, but horror elements and very well described. Okay, that's all for the books. I haven't got a cup of tea. I should have a cup of tea. I'll tell you what, I'm going to pause it here, get a cup of tea from upstairs, and then we'll carry on with the film section. Okay, see you in a bit. Ooh. Delicious. Okay, I've got my tea. So let's get back down to business. Now for the films. I've chosen 5 films ranging from films made in the 60s, 1960s, 70s, 80s, and a fairly more recent one. Hopefully some of these are slightly more obscure, but who knows, you may already know them. Anyway, these are some of my favorites. Okay, the first one is Rosemary's Baby by Roman Polanski, directed it. 1968, this one. And one of the things I love about it is its setting in New York in the 60s. So it's quite interesting, the fashions people wear, and just the views of the city life, and of course the story, which is quite interesting. So a young couple, they're moving to a new apartment in New York, and they're hoping to start a family very soon. The husband's an aspiring actor. I can't remember what the wife does. I'm not sure if she's going to be raising the child at the beginning. Anyway, they meet a very strange couple who live next door in the apartment block. And as it kind of transpires, they're Satanists. And they make some kind of deal with the husband to give him success in his failing acting career, in exchange for putting the demon seed into his wife. It's a very dark concept for a film, especially from the 60s. But it's done in such an amazing way. It's shot really nicely and interestingly, considering most of it takes place in the apartment. Yeah, and it's really nice. So I thought it'd be nice if we watched some clips together for each film. So I'm going to put the clip up now for Rosemary's Baby, and let's watch it together. Right. Where are we? Can't believe it. Oh, there we are.
Terrific, just terrific.
Goodbye, darling.
Thank
Goodbye. Yeah, it was lovely. Bless you. Come see
Minnie!
me again. Minnie, you good kid.
About that steak, huh?
Oh, my God. And the cake. How did you eat 2 pieces? It was
Out of
weird.
politeness. That's how I ate 2 pieces. Out of politeness.
Only 3 dinner plates that match. Shh. And all that beautiful, beautiful silver.
It would be nice. Maybe they'll will it to us.
Oh, yeah. Guess what they have in their bathroom?
A bidet.
Jokes for the John.
No.
A book and a hook right next to the toilet.
Roman's stories are pretty damned interesting, though. Never even heard of Forbes Robertson before.
I'm gonna go over there again tomorrow night and hear some more.
You are?
Yeah, he asked me. Here, do this damn thing for me, will you?
I thought we were going to do something with Joan and Dick Jellicoe.
Is that definite?
It wasn't definite.
Let's see them next week. You don't have to come along if you don't want to, you know. You can stay here.
Yeah, I think I will stay here.
You know, Henry Irving.
Okay, there we are. You can't help feel sorry for this poor woman. It's really horrible situation, especially when she doesn't really know what's going on. The husband is a swine. Let's just put it that way. Okay, give that one a go. Really worth watching. Let's move on to the next one. The Wicker Man. One of my favorites. Okay, so this one was from 1973. And it stars Christopher Lee as the bad guy. And it's about a remote island off the coast of Scotland called Summerisle, I think it's called. And a policeman arrives from the mainland trying to solve the disappearance of a young girl on the island. But when he gets there, no one knows about this girl. They've never heard of her. And so it's about him trying to discover what's going on. All very strange. And as the film goes on, you realize they have quite a strange religious ideas. The policeman who visits is a devout Christian, and he's at odds with what appears to be a pagan religion being practiced on the island. Very odd practices, maypoles, costume, fertility rites and orgies and things, which he's not amused by. The film also has a very brilliant soundtrack, kind of folk music, but also it's got a bit of bagpipes there, and really quite unsettling, I suppose, when juxtaposed with the quite odd things that are going on. And as you go on with the film, you realize everything isn't quite what it seems. He's being deceived. I can't say too much more about this other than highly recommending it. Don't watch the Nicolas Cage one. Well, watch it for a laugh, I suppose, but this one is the business. Right, let's watch a clip. Here we are. Trixie, very Trixie. The chap with the very long hair and wearing the skirt was Christopher Lee, who is very good in it. In fact, everyone's good. It's brilliant. Okay, next one. Ooh, another old one from the 70s, 1976, To the Devil a Daughter, also starring Christopher Lee, who is also amazing in. Some of the other acting in this film is a lot to be desired, but it's quite an interesting story. And again, I like the setting. I think it was filmed in Germany primarily, but also over here in England. And so I like the setting and the the fashions, and because there's a lot filmed, on site in the street, things like that. Anyway, I just like films from that era. In a nutshell, this is similar in some ways to Rosemary's Baby, but it's further along the track, so to speak. So a child has already been born with in a kind of satanic, kind of ritualistic way, but is now coming of age. She's just turning 18. And Christopher Lee and his fanatical Satanists want to baptize her in the blood of a demon baby, so that the devil then inhabits a grown woman. It's very convoluted. I'm not quite sure why they went that way. I suppose it's the devil's essence is within a normal body. Otherwise, he wouldn't be able to influence the people looking like a devil. That seems to be the thought behind it. The special effects are quite good, actually, for this era, especially for a Hammer horror film from the 70s. Yes, and other than the slightly stilted acting from some people, some of the actors, it's actually really good. Quite well shot as well, I thought. Anyway, give that one a go too, if you can find it. Okay, I almost forgot to do the clip. So this is a clip from To the Devil a Daughter. Let's watch together, see what you think. This is a clip from the very beginning of the film, where Christopher Lee, who's previously a priest, is being excommunicated for his views on creating a satanic child or person. Here we are.
Sapiens in corde suo, non est Deus, corrupti sunt, et abominalis facti sunt in studiis suis, non est qui faciat bonum, non est usque ad unum. Suspensus est de divinis, id est de officio sacerdotali, et excommunicatus ex unione fidelium, sine vera penitentia et absolutione.
Excommunicate. It is not heresy, and I will not recant.
Sanctae matris ecclesiae, nullam spem habeas redeondi ad istam unionem.
Yeah, the music's used quite nicely. It's quite eerie. Definitely give that a go if you can find it. Right. Okay, next on the list is Hellraiser from 1987. Absolutely love this film, and funnily enough, it's written and directed by Clive Barker, who I've mentioned earlier. Now, this film features one of the most iconic horror characters knowable, Pinhead.
You solved the box. We came.
Indeed. He's a mean fellow, but quite likable. And so, right, this film is about primarily, or it centers around a puzzle box. Now, this puzzle box, once opened, transports you into hell, more or less. And the man at the beginning, Frank, opens said box and gets obliterated to spend eternity in hell. His essence remains in the house where he did this sacred rite to open the box, the house in which his brother Larry and his wife Julia move into. Larry has an accident, cuts his hand moving a bed, a mattress, and the blood goes on the floorboards of where Frank died, and little by little Frank comes back to life, which is quite an amazing sequence in itself. Once Frank's back, he needs more blood to get more flesh on his bones. He does this by enlisting the help of Julia, Larry's wife. This is a really, really good film. And it wasn't anything like I expected it to be. Everyone knows about Pinhead. You've seen pictures of Pinhead, but I had no idea that this story was going down the route that it did. Anyway, it's up to Larry's daughter, what's she called? I'm going to have to look. I do know Kirsty, of course, to save the day. I've picked a clip that's not particularly scary, so it should be okay for those of you who don't like scary things. Okay, let's watch. This features Kirsty and the puzzle box. Well, as far as I'm aware, I think if you open the puzzle box in certain ways, certain configurations, different things happen. I think the configuration she's opened is a portal, I think, into hell, but without the Cenobites. I haven't talked about the Cenobites, but Pinhead is one of them, and they're kind of hellish, demonic priests that love pain, inflicting pain. Yeah. Lovely, lovely stuff. Okay, give that one a watch if you haven't already. It's not too scary. It's a little bit gory. It's very gory in places. And certain scenes were removed at the time for various reasons. Mostly, I think, the sexual content was... some of that was removed. Instead, they put in some more knife action as a flick knife action instead. Anyway, look it up on Wikipedia, some interesting stuff. Okay, the last one is Antichrist, directed by Lars von Trier. When was that one made? Oh, I didn't write that down. It wasn't that long ago. I think it was 2000 and possibly 6. I don't know. I can't remember. But this is a very unpleasant film. There's some unpleasant scenes in it. So anyway, husband and wife, they've recently lost their young son, toddler, who fell out of a window to his death. The father is a psychiatrist, and the wife, he's trying to help the wife who can't come to terms with the guilt that she feels over the boy's death. And so they move for a period of time to a log cabin in the middle of a forest to recuperate. Things go wrong. The father has kind of hallucinations, and the mother gradually becomes kind of deranged. and fixates upon witches and the idea that women are inherently evil, and just becomes a bit crazed really. Various things happen, and some very unpleasant things, genital mutilation for one of them, which is difficult to watch. It's not for everyone, this film, but when I watched it, it's such amazing, it's really well filmed. There's some really nice slow motion sequences, and the sound is really quite haunting. And it kind of stayed with me for a long time and gave me a nightmare, which is a good measure of a film, I would say. I don't often get affected by films, but this one did. Now, the clip I'm going to play isn't for everyone. It's a little bit scary. It's a kind of little bit gory, but also quite scary. I'm going to play it now. If you want to skip ahead, go to here, and I'll see you on the other side. For those of you who wish to watch, let's get into this.
Chaos reigns.
Oof. I think it was that fox that gave me the nightmare, actually. But yeah, it's certainly atmospheric and very disturbing. Give it a go if you dare. Okay, that's all I've got for now. If you have any recommendations for books or films, let me know. I've probably seen more horror films than I have read books. But if you know of a book that's particularly scary, stick it in the comments below and I'll give it a read. Okay, so that's all for now. I hope you've enjoyed this little whatever it is. And next week I'll be back on, hopefully talking about how the next book, my own book's going. Although I've done very little on it so far. And yeah, I'll see you then next Friday. Until then, cheerio.